All right, well, welcome everyone to the DLIS webinar. Today is October 21st. It's 3:45 p.m. I'm Michael Crossfox. I'm going to introduce you to our symposiarch, Luke Henke, and our convened panel of esteemed alumni. Unfortunately, Rachel hasn't joined the call yet. We'll wait for her, or we'll welcome her when she arrives. We're joined today by Kim Simmons, who's a teen librarian at the Jericho Public Library. Give us a little wave, Kim.
Hello.
Annalisa Purdy, who's the senior children's librarian at the New York Public Library.
Hey, everybody.
And Ashley Henricks, who is assistant community library manager at the Queens Library.
Hello.
All right, well, introductions out of the way. Luke, step right up.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. And would love to offer a great introduction to our panelists. This is an interesting topic for me personally because I don't know much about youth libraries. I don't know, or youth services for that matter. I'm more in the archival world, so I'm personally interested in hearing about the work that you all do because it's extremely important. And I know personally, as I've been going through this program, I've started, and I'm coming to the end of my program. I've started reflecting on kind of how I've gotten myself to this point, and by and large, one of the things that I've come to realize is I've always lived in libraries. As a child, it was one of my favorite places, and then specifically through middle school and high school, I spent extended periods of time in the libraries that I had available to me. So that's why I'm particularly interested in this because I just recently came to that kind of revelation. So particularly interested to see what we all have to say. And I see that Rachel is joining us. So hello, Rachel. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Hi there. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I just tried signing in from my phone instead. So,
Oh, no problem at all. We're glad you could join us.
thank you.
So I'll just start off, since we've already had these introductions, just kind of going around the panel and asking everybody for their own personal philosophy when it comes to teen services and youth services. Kind of what you think are the most important aspects of the positions that you hold, and kind of some of the most important things that you can offer teens with the services that you provide. So Annalisa, can I start with you, please?
Sure. So, hey, everybody. Happy to be here. Excuse me. See, I would have to say that my philosophy to youth services overall is that youth are people, kids are people. And I know that that sounds very simple and it's an obvious fact, but sometimes we come across it often even when talking with colleagues or even talking with parents and other library visitors, this idea that youth need to be catered to just as much as adult patrons do, that they have their own thoughts and processes, their own ways of seeing the world, and their own ideas about what they need from library services too. And that sometimes that gets lost in the hustle and bustle of everything that we're doing and trying to meet everybody, but that it's important to realize that they need that attention, they need that guidance for whatever they're looking for, and that they need to have their feelings validated as well. And whether that's inside the library or outside the library, but especially as us as information professionals, to recognize that they're their own autonomous people and help deliver those services to them accordingly.
Great, thank you. Ashley, could I ask your opinion for your philosophy next?
Sure. I was basically going to say something incredibly similar, but more about taking up space. Children and teens deserve to take up space in the public library, just like anybody else. They deserve to have a place to sit. They deserve to have computers to use, space to interact with each other, space to just exist and exist wholly, not silently. I think a lot of people, especially older patrons, and people that work in the library that aren't necessarily youth services people, forget that sometimes, that they are people and deserve to speak, deserve to hang out, take up space, and have the same level of service, and just exist in the public library space, just like anybody else. We run into it very frequently, especially because our teens share computers with the adults. They don't share computers with the children. In my library anyway, we don't have our own dedicated teen room because it's small branch. And that is something that I'm constantly explaining to adults, that the teens deserve to be there and they are entitled to their computer time, even if you think that them playing on the computer or doing their homework on the computer isn't worthy compared to the letter that you have to write. It is still their time and they deserve to have it, however they choose to spend it. And just kind of being that intermediary, guaranteeing that they have the space and the time that they're entitled to and the services that they're entitled to is a really big tenet of youth services, I think.
Awesome, thank you. Moving alphabetically, I'll just go for Kim next.
Okay. Yes, and I have to say my sentiments exactly to what the other two before me just said. One thing that I found that is most important as in dealing with teenagers is that they do have unique needs, I think, in the library, and they have often been overlooked. And I think that there's so many things going on in their lives that we maybe, you know, no matter how old you are, you kind of forget. And just even speaking up or asking a question can be difficult. And I feel in my position that it's so important to just try to be as welcoming as I possibly can, to be available as much as I can to them. I just, for a little example, just had a program where I was teaching teens how to do a simple crochet. And they were going to make these rectangles that we were going to then send to an organization called Warm Up America, which, you know, is a run by nonprofit organization, and they put these rectangles all together and they make blankets for like homeless people or anybody in need. And when I started the program, first of all, I was so excited that I had 4 boys and 4 girls, okay? Because typically I think that it was often seen crochet or any of the fiber arts like that are girl things, and it's not. That's not the way. And so I had 4 boys, 4 girls, and before I started teaching the program, one of my teen boys said to me, "So do you know how to do this stuff too?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And one of the other boys said, "She's teaching us." And he thought that was the coolest thing. He said, "Oh, you're doing this?" And I said, "Yeah." So that, I feel like it's so important for us in this world of, you know, dealing with youth, is to just to be there for them, with them. If I'm not running the program, I'm still there. I still am interacting with them, because I think that a lot of times, you know, schools are big. Sometimes they can be overlooked. And I like them, if they come to the library, I want them to know that I know who they are and I value them. And I feel like doing a lot of my own programs kind of helps me along in that. So yeah, so my, I guess you could say my philosophy is be there, just be there for them and understand that they are in a tremendous time of transition.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Rachel, please offer your wisdom.
Well, I think a lot of what I would say has intersections with what my colleagues have already said quite eloquently. But on that note, my biggest philosophy, really this is true for any aspect of librarianship, is that we need to meet people where they are. Whether that's for, say, a 1-year-old, think about it this way. A 1-year-old 1 year is 100% of their life. So that 5-minute interaction that we have with a little child, that's huge. For an older child, or a tween or a teen, those 5 minutes, 10 minutes that we spend helping them do research, or even more importantly, if we're, say, in a program or having a one-on-one discussion with them about a resource that they need or would like to see, if we're meeting them where they are and holding space with those people, not only are we fulfilling an informational need, we're also fulfilling a societal need, a social need, and an emotional need. And I feel personally that my biggest task in the library world is an informal, real world social emotional learning curriculum that isn't based around one specific instance of we need to be kind to others, or we don't hit, hands are not for hitting, things like that, but more that we need to teach by example how to think critically, think civilly and politely, but also express both our agreement and our disagreement. And the best way that we can do that is by reaching out and doing outreach, of course, but also meeting people exactly where they are at the moment they need them.
Yeah, and that's actually a great transition into my next question, which is how do each of you match services that you offer to the unique needs of the youth in your communities? And so just going in the roundabout that we did before, Annalisa, can you start us off with this question?
Sure. And I think that once again, just going back to what my colleagues have said as well about how everyone is different and everyone is unique, that definitely applies to doing outreach or interacting with people, with children, with teens, where they're at that point. For example, in different story time sessions, when kids are getting excited, especially for children who haven't been in a large group before, whether they're very small, who I call the tots, or they're a little older, like in grade school. If they get excited and they're not sitting down completely, that's fine. Let them, I don't mind letting them roam around and look around and explore different things. And once again, in the before time, coming in to sit on my lap, if possible, to get comfortable and enjoy themselves, and understanding that this is a new experience for them. And especially if it's someone who's just moved into the neighborhood or has started to come to this particular library for the first time, giving them the chance to get acclimated to the space. And eventually, and this has happened all the time, by the second or third time around, they're completely comfortable. They know that someone's not going to tell them, shush, sit immediately, stand up when we say stand up, and file out of the door in orderly fashion, lovely child, so that we can train you. No, they know that they're going to enjoy the story, they're going to enjoy the song, and that everyone's there to support them, especially for a lot of children who may not have that level of interaction outside of the school. One of the things that we've noticed in our area where our library is situated is that a lot of the after school programs, unfortunately, have been cut. So the library is that one other space outside of school, outside of home, where they're going to get the chance to interact with other children on their age level and to just be in a space that's not constricted by certain confines. So we understand that and try to help everybody get acclimated by saying that it's relaxed as long as nothing's getting thrown or no one's going into these big histrionics, which is usually a bigger problem with the adults than the children. Everything's fine, and it's always a welcoming space for them.
Wonderful, thank you. Ashley, how do you and your library meet the needs of teens in your area?
Sure. I think something that's really important to consider is what type of library you work in. Do you work in a small branch library? Do you work in a larger town library? For me, I work in a small branch library. Getting to know your community, not that it's not important in a larger town library or a different library setting, but especially when you're in a very small branch community, you really get to know the people that are in your library, the people that you serve, and tailoring collection development, tailoring programming, tailoring basically everything to who you have living in your community. I have a very large Orthodox Jewish population in my community. So not only am I making sure that I have programs that go to major public holidays, go to heritage months, go to things that the library are doing, our system-wide initiatives, but I also have programs and content and parts of my collection that are tailored to what my customers want and what they are interested in doing. If I was working in a different library, maybe I wouldn't have as many religious oriented books that I have, or I wouldn't have, or I would have programs on Friday afternoons. But guess what? No one comes to my Friday afternoon programs because they are getting ready for Shabbos, and there's no one around on Friday afternoon. So we've learned through trial and error that Friday afternoon programs are not super successful. What are super successful are like Thursday late night programs at my library, or we have a lot of, across the street from us, we have like a dance school and a music instrument school and a tutoring place. And we know that there are a lot of families that are there on Saturdays that come in from all areas of Queens. So we usually, in the before times, as Annalisa has said, we usually have programs on Saturdays because we have lots of people from all over Queens that are in our area on Saturdays. So I think being flexible and learning the community that you work for and you work in is really important. And I think that's applicable for all areas of librarianship, especially in a public library. And also seeing what your people need. Do they need a craft program? Do your teens need a craft program? Do they want a craft program? Or would they rather have an open space and borrow your laptops to work collaboratively on projects or to game, which is something that we found in the before times, that our teens and tweens, and I kind of don't love using the word tween, but you kind of know what I mean, that like junior high age, not quite in high school, but they're not in the kids' room anymore. What they really needed was just a space to exist, to not get yelled at by the other adults in the library, to be free from the time constraints of the computers and have a chance to work collaboratively on group projects together. And that's what they needed and that's what they wanted. So instead of trying to do a scheduled program, it was, hey, if I see 4 or more of that age group in the library, me and another librarian will kind of like work it out, or we can split the time and we can make the laptops available and we'll just hang out in the room with them. We'll chat with them. We'll see if they need help with anything. But if not, just kind of existing for your community in the way that they need is something that I think comes with experience. It's not necessarily something that can be learned in library school, but it's something to keep in mind, that the perfect story time that you are going to create for your Intro to Children's class with Dr. Lee is amazing. And if you have the time to plan a program like that, do it. It's wonderful. But being super flexible and kind of creating things on the fly to suit the needs of your customers in your library is something that I think is super important.
Thank you. That was some interesting insight, and especially how a lot of libraries target certain demographics. So I find that to be particularly interesting. Kim, I'm going to ask you the same question. How do your colleagues work to serve the teens in your community?
Well, the community that we serve here in Jericho is very high achieving school district. So there are challenges in that. I know that there are many areas on the island here that have a completely different set of circumstances than we have here in Jericho. So we don't have necessarily an issue of kids not having access to technology. some of the things that other libraries really have to take into consideration. One of the big things that I've only been in this position since January, but I've been in this library for 10 years. One of the things that they're really needing right now is community service opportunities. So I have to really rack my brain and do a lot of searching around for interesting, unique community service opportunities that they haven't already done, or so that sometimes is a challenge. That's why I did the program that I referred to a few minutes ago, the crochet, because that I felt like this is teaching them a valuable skill, but also they're doing something that is helping somebody else. So I do have to offer a lot of community service opportunities. I'm finding that the needs change rather, frequently. So, COVID really changed things a lot for us here as far as what we're offering to our teens. And I've found that what works really well right now and what's giving me some pretty good attendance numbers is offering programs that they can either do at home and I have them on Zoom, or they can do here at the library. So we're opening up more things now. I know prior to this recording, we were talking a little bit about which libraries are offering in-person programs now, and we are doing it. So what I'm doing is for the teens is I'm giving them the opportunity. If you want to come in here and do this community service, I did paracord bracelets recently, and I gave them the opportunity that you can do it here. I'll show you how to do it, or you can do it from home. Watch the videos, because Operation Gratitude has some excellent videos on how to make paracord bracelets. So, so I feel like that's something that has only come about because of COVID. We used to do things just one way. Now we're doing things that whatever works for you, making it as easy as possible for them to participate. You want to do this at home? You do it at home. You want to come in here? You do it here. So flexibility again is huge. That's a really important. But the communities are always changing. If I were in this position here in Jericho, even 6-7 years ago, things might have been a little bit different. We have a very large Asian American community that is coming in for the school district. So, maybe 10 years ago, this community was predominantly Jewish community. And so it's constantly changing, constantly morphing. And I have to keep, I guess you'd say, my fingers on the pulse of the community and see what changes I need to be prepared for. So it's an evolving, always evolving thing, with what to offer.
No, I think you put it very clearly that these sorts of positions require you to stay in tune. Well, all of you have made it clear that this position, these sorts of services require you to stay in tune with the communities and make sure that we are serving the people that need to be served. We're connecting them with things that are going to inform their daily lives and help the communities they live in. But I also like, Kim, that you mentioned specifically kind of some more maybe almost abstract ways that libraries are helping their communities, because you may not think of community service being a direct service that's offered by a library. But I think that's definitely a testament to the kinds of there really aren't limits to libraries. I mean, the services they can offer vast. So I think that you made that quite clear. So thank you. And Rachel, could we ask you the same question? How are you connecting with your teens?
So I'm in a rather interesting position in that I recently, a few months ago, started a position as head of children's services at the Great Neck Library. And we're known here for our multi-generational programming that stems multiple departments. For example, we have the STEM lab here, which offers programming for young children all the way through adults. That connects people with technology, both some of the conventional things like one-on-one computer help, but also some of the more exotic things such as a laser cutter. But on that note, what I've always found is that no matter what group you're working with, children or teens, the need to innovate is always there. Now, I'm not saying throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, but there are certain things that we can learn from every experience and every successful program we have, or every successful interaction we have with patrons as well. There's something to be learned from that, but always to continue thinking about what can we improve on? How can we take this familiar thing and offer a slight variation on it to make it a little bit more interesting? On that note, specifically with teens, we're very lucky to have here at the main building the Levels Teen Center, which is an interdisciplinary center for teens that focuses on theater arts and art, visual arts, and offers a little bit of everything in a safe, welcoming space where if teens just want to come and spend some time, they're also welcome to do that. So it's interesting in that we've had some crossover between even the Levels program and our children's program, the same way our STEM lab offers events for a variety of ages. I'm proud to say that we've actually asked and have the Levels teens currently writing from their theater program. They're writing a puppet show now for the younger children that will be performed during the December school break. But so we associate puppets, for this example, with young children and how little kids love puppets and songs and fairy tales. That's not something you typically associate with teens. But when you put it together with we're giving them the opportunity to be creative, and this is a high achieving and very creative district, the opportunity to be creative and also have the leadership of directing their own show and staging it and make also the creative side of making their own puppets, but putting it all together and giving them that responsibility. That's empowering for a teen. And it's also fascinating for a little child who sees that and says, wow, that big kid made that. I could do that too.
No, that's really interesting. I really like that idea of multi-generational programming. That's not something I've really thought of before, but I would be intrigued to see how that manifests itself in different programs. The next question I have is kind of a two-part question, and it's to kind of gather some of the tactics that you all use. And I won't go in the regimented circle this time. We can kind of just open forum this one. But what are some tactics that you use to attract teens to your spaces? And do teens have the kind of authority to help decide what's in your library collections? So whoever wants to start that one, you could just raise your hand. Yes, Rachel, if you could start us off, please. Oh,
Hi
I
there.
think
Oh,
oh,
sorry about that. Connection
oh,
issue, I think.
okay,
Can you
great.
see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, as I mentioned, I'm now more in a children's role, serving children and elementary schoolers rather than the older teens. But from my experience with collaborating with them from other programs and certainly positions I've worked in before, is that this is similar to my previous answer, but giving teens the feeling of ownership of what they're doing. And even if I have some ideas in mind of what I'm planning and what I'd like the end result to be, I like to invite the teens to answer and ask them, how do you feel you will help most? What do you want to do to contribute to this project? And giving them the opportunity, if there's something that they're passionate about or especially skilled at or talented at, Or conversely, if they're not talented at something, but they want to get better at it, I like to give them the opportunity to try and the ownership that when they succeed, it's because they put in the effort.
I would agree with that and kind of piggyback off of it and say, I kind of approach my teens like Montessori learning. Like I kind of like to leave things very open-ended and present them with a lot of opportunities and almost like self-directed play. Like say, you know, we have this space available, like, you know, here's our board game cabinet and we have tables set up, or here's our craft cabinet and have that, you know, that available to them, or have the computers available. And being kind of flexible, especially if you have, I don't know about other libraries, but we have more than one school that comes to our library. We have more than one group of teens that don't necessarily know each other. And some of them might want to do board games. Some of them might want to do arts and crafts. Some of them might just want a quiet place to work, and kind of just, if you have the staffing, if you have the space, if you have the resources, kind of just make those things available to them, and not that you shouldn't offer regimented programming, because sometimes they are super interested in it, but if you have the flexibility, also offer something a little bit more self-directed or open-ended, and just provide the resources, the space, and the companionship. Because once you reach that kind of teen librarian stage, they don't need somebody sitting there holding their hand necessarily. They might ask for your help, but if you treat them more like a peer, they're more likely to treat you like a peer and to treat you with respect and courtesy and act more adult, because they are becoming adults. I like the term emerging adult sometimes for my older teens as well. And just kind of leaving things open-ended if possible, and just kind of being there as a mentor companion as opposed to being a librarian sometimes.
Just to
Alex-
piggyback
oh,
off of that, like one of the things that's worked well with the teens at my space is letting them know that they're under no obligation to stay for a particular program or a particular activity if they may not be into it, because that's often what they may feel they have to do. Even if we say, hey, we've got something exciting over here, you're welcome to come to sit just for the sake of sitting, but to make our presence known and to let them know that we are here for them and they don't have to stay, but if they want to check it out, that they're willing to check it out. When we had a 3D printer, which we borrowed for about a few months through a program, it was very popular with the teens, but it took a while to get them interested in it at first. Many of them who didn't really understand exactly how it was working, even though they had heard about it before. And so they would hear some of the others sitting in the room and programming and printing out their materials. And while occasionally I would see a face hover at the door and peek in, and just told them you can come in on your own time when you want to. It's ready. And the same reluctant ones who may have been browsing or just doing homework or doing something else on the computer eventually ended up coming in and printing out their own materials and learning more about what they could do at home. But if the pressure were there saying you must sit for this requisite program, like try it for at least 10 or 15 minutes, we probably wouldn't have been able to get them, because that's something that they expect for adults to tell them to do. You must sit here and you must be there. So letting them know that they do have the freedom to choose, not just in programming, but even in the selection of the books that we offer. I do talk to them as well about what they would like to see on the shelves, what they liked, what they didn't like, and when possible, putting in orders and talking to my colleagues about how we can refresh the collection to help it reflect some more of what they are interested in. And I'm very proud over the past 2 years or so how we've been able to grow that collection, especially with a lot of memoirs and graphic novels, into things that teens are excited about because it reflects something that they're happy about in their own lives.
I would agree with that.
I'm finding that, well, first of all, I'm planning on having, starting up a teen advisory board in January, where I'm going to have certain, maybe once a month, have teens who sign up. They'll get community service time for it. They can come in, we'll have snacks and stuff like that, make it very casual. Come in and I'll have them kind of help me and tell me what kind of programs they want to see in the library, what kind of books are they interested in. But I'm also finding by them coming in, I'm able to see, like when they come in just to take out books or when they're in my programs, I discovered very recently, and I'm wondering if anybody else has found this same thing, TikTok is absolutely
TikTok.
amazing in finding what they want. So I had a group of girls come in one day over the summer and they were asking me for all these books. And I was, getting what we had and giving them the books. And I said, boy, I'm so happy to see you have such an interest in reading. It's very exciting, for, in the summer that you young teenagers are so excited about these books. And it turned out that they were getting these recommendations on TikTok. So one of the girls said to me, have you ever heard of TikTok? And I said, yes, I have. Well, there's somebody on TikTok who's recommending all these books. And I never really liked reading prior to reading one of the book suggestions from TikTok. And she said, and it was so good. And now I want to read everything that this person recommends. So now I look at TikTok and I see what books are being recommended. And it's funny because I'm finding that so many of the books that are being recommended on TikTok, I can't keep on the shelves, and I'm ordering more of them. And we used to have a big fantasy was always big here, the fantasy novels. And now those aren't really going there. It's the murder mysteries, the even historical fiction.
Yes.
And really big on TikTok. So you find in this craziest places that this is a huge influencer right now. So, along the lines of what I was saying before about having a teen advisory board here, I feel like I also have that TikTok as my teen advisory board too, because even though I'm not really using it, we do have a library TikTok, and we share. I share ideas with the my technology department who creates these TikToks. It's not even so much important that I'm sharing things as it is that I'm looking at what is being shared by the country, by the world, and the teens are looking at all this stuff and they're getting their book recommendations, or I'm sure I can find things about programming and whatever via this amazing tool.
I love that so much. I
Yeah.
think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see these. And I'm even getting parents coming in and saying, oh, my son is looking, he wants this book. And I don't even know how he heard of this book. And I said, I bet he heard about it on TikTok, So, and there's a big crossover now too, with the young adult and adult books. TikTok is recommending a lot of adult books to young adults. And so I'm feeling like I might have to start a collection of teen crossover books that are really adult books, but they're very popular with teens. So it's exciting. It's actually a very exciting thing to see how books can be so popular on social media, so gotta take it.
That's
Agreed.
interesting that you mention the use of social media, because oftentimes, when we talk about social media in libraries and in archives, it's, the professionals working in these institutions using these platforms to kind of showcase their collections or to kind of, find similar organizations that, you could form partnerships with or things like that. But oftentimes we don't think about it as a tool for finding things for our constituents. So I think that's an interesting point that you make
Mhm.
with regards to social media.
Yeah. If I were an author right now, that's where I'd be.
Yeah. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to add to this topic before I ask my last question? No, I think what I have gathered from that question or those couple of questions that I asked was autonomy is key for keeping teens involved in your programs and in your spaces. And then lastly, I wanted to ask about experiences that you all have had with constituencies or with your constituencies that may have been difficult. Like, what kind of difficulties have you faced in your library, um, working with teens and offering youth services?
Luke, I'm just going to have to exit because I have another meeting to be at 4:30. So,
Sure.
uh,
No, please.
exit
Thank you
quietly.
for joining us, Kim.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Michael.
I would say conflict among groups, especially if they go to the same school but they're not friends. I hesitate to use the word bullying because I feel like that has a more like sinister connotation. Definitely there could be experiences like instances of that happening, but I think it's more just that, some groups are there to be quiet, some groups are there to hang out, some groups are there to do work together, and kind of just, especially if they know each other and they don't want to be together. Often teen rooms or teen spaces don't tend to be the largest spaces. And so getting that distance and being able to kind of offer a separate space when they're already kind of limited in space, if that makes sense. Like I had a group here last week where they're both from the same school. I know what school they go to. They were my elementary school age kids before the panorama, and they went on to the junior high. And so I know them from when they were like 4th, 5th graders, but now they're like my 7th, 8th graders. And 3 of them came to do homework together, be quiet. They like had their books, they had their stuff out, they're like working really hard. And then 3 of my rowdier boys came in, and they sat at the next table over. And my studious kids wanted to move. There was no other teen tables available. We only have 2. And so I was like, okay. I was like, well, I can't, move you super far, but here's this table over. There's a bookcase separating the 2 of you. And maybe it'll be a little bit quieter. And then my rowdy boys followed them and moved to the table on the other side. And I was like, no. And they're like, we're not bothering them. I was like, I know, but you guys want to hang out and chat and be maybe a little bit louder, and that's fine. I haven't had any complaints from you. You're being respectful, but they're trying to focus on their work. So maybe we can have the 2 groups be separate if they're done with their homework and they want to hang out afterwards. I have no problem with you guys coming together, but you have to be respectful and give them their space. And the kids that wanted to study were really appreciative. The kids that wanted to hang out and chat with each other did not give me a huge problem. And when you're working with teens, acceptance is often a huge win. And it was a really successful interaction. And I think that can be kind of one of the most challenging parts of working with teens. I don't know about anybody else, but that's something that I encounter a lot in my small library anyway.
I think along similar lines, something that's been an issue both here and at other libraries I've worked at is really it's a competition for space. Not, whoop, my lights just went off. Not just physical space, but mental space and attention. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. The space to have a place to study along the same lines as what Ashley was saying. We have a number of areas for quiet study and tables, but they always seem to be filled by a combination of high school and college students. And the high school students tend to hang out in one area, the college students in another, the middle schoolers in a different area, and the elementary schoolers usually in the children's room. But especially where those areas overlap, a space to study and do homework or even have a snack, that tends to be where those friction points are because everyone wants to feel like they own the space, as they should. It's their library. But at the same time, getting sometimes folks to recognize that they have to share is still the toughest lesson, I think, especially now in the after time, so to speak, where we are trying to, generally speaking, we are trying to have at least a feeling of safety through social distancing and trying to keep everybody in a space where they feel comfortable and they want to come back.
Agreed. And I think a little bit, at least, I'm sure you guys experience this as well, is we have a rule where it's only children's and adults with children in the children's room. That is a safety issue. It keeps everybody comfortable. But sometimes there's no one in the children's room and the adult room or the teen area are overflowing with people. And so I have an agreement with my teens, and they know this because it's an established thing. I have no problem if the children's room is empty and you want to get away from the people that you don't want to be near. You can absolutely go sit in my children's room, with the caveat that when little kids come in or children with parents come in, once there's little kids in there, you need to go back to where your designated space is. And I think having some type of flexibility as opposed to like hard and fast rules when it comes to things like that. Like there's no reason why if my children's room is 100% empty, there's no child in there, that I have to say, no, I'm sorry, you can't go over there. But having kind of that, like, I'll do this for you if you understand where I'm coming from and can kind of like agree to what I'm offering, I think is something that's very helpful, because they're not little kids. They're not super unreasonable. They're emerging adults. They understand logic. They understand negotiation. So kind of like offering them something and showing that you're trying to work with them, I think is super beneficial in forming a relationship with the teens in your library.
Yes, space is definitely, just to continue with that, a big issue in libraries across the country, especially when dealing with teens and their specific needs. We have in our branch 3 separate floors, so, which is a rarity. My goodness, hey, we have the teen floor and the children's floor and the adult floor. And one of the issues that I've found a lot is negotiating on behalf of my teens with the adults who are often still viewing them as these nuisances and who are making noise and are constantly traveling up and down the elevator, and myself saying, as long as you are under 21, you are under my aegis. Don't mess with my babies. I don't care if they're 16 and 17 years old. They are teens, they are emerging adults, but they are still my babies. They still have the right to use this space and navigate through this space if they need something to go up and down the same way that you do. One of the things that I'm noticing a lot, which is bittersweet, is that a lot of the emerging teens on the teen space are also children who I've seen when they were younger, who have been in the space when they were younger. And even though they're moving up to this floor, which has materials that are on their level and has a greater variety of offerings on the computer and whatnot, they'll still float back down to the children's area because that's what they're used to. And also because they're coming to see the staff there who have helped guide them in that way. And so I don't have an issue with that at all, because they're still, as long as they're in the space, if they want to just come down and talk to me for a while or show me something or ask for help to come upstairs for something else, it's perfectly fine. But just letting them know, and letting mostly the adults know that they do have the right to continue to navigate the space, that it's not going to be an issue, it's not disrupting library services, and that it's a part of their path of having that autonomy and feeling comfortable in the space that belongs to them too.
Agreed.
Thank you for all of those insights. Just to wrap up, I want to offer a couple of observations that I've made. So teens are people, they have opinions, and we need to honor and respect those. Youth librarians have a particularly an interesting responsibility in offering abstract programming, whether it be that multi-generational programming Rachel was mentioning, or the community service that Kim's library was offering. Autonomy is key when working with teens and youth, and youth librarians act as mediators and representatives for their constituents, those teens that often aren't seen quite as adults, but they're also not children. They're kind of caught in a gray area. So a lot of times you all do the important work of sticking up for them and making sure their voices are heard. So thank you for that. So Michael, would you like to close out the session for today?
If I unmute myself, I could start talking, right? Okay, so thank you, Luke. Thank you, panelists. That was very insightful. I get the impression that you all found a niche that suits you. The way you talk about your professional practice, it seems like you have the passion and you also have the stamina and the strength and the will to proceed. So I'm grateful to that. And I want to send you wishes for your continued success. Keep us informed here at DLIS of changes as you progress through your career, as you advance. And as always, let me know if I can assist you in any way. Back to the business at hand, housekeeping. The DLS advisement period is underway. Please, if you're watching this, reach out to your advisor and make an appointment to talk about your program of study. We're planning for the spring 2022 academic session. November 1st, the university is closed in observation of All Saints Day. It's my first day off in like 3 months, so thank you. November 4th, we're going to hear from a friend of mine who designed a program for veterans in the library. So we'll be having a conversation about serving veterans with our library services for veterans and for the veteran members of our community. And finally, November 9th is when online registration begins. Now, I selected this quote. This is from Elizabeth Ann Seton. She was the first American-born saint canonized by the Catholic Church. And I didn't know what today's panel discussion was going to be, but I think this is relevant to what Luke summarized as the autonomy of youth. And, if we just live a simple life, if we are focused, as our panelists are, focused on the provision of library services, then we can see every library user as an autonomous person of equal value. And these are the words of Elizabeth Ann Seton that I want to leave you with today. Well, thanks again, panelists. Thank you, synchronous attendees. And we will see you again on November 4.
Thank you so much.